Yet life in Dallas wasn't without its moments of solitude. At night I sometimes found myself staring out the window, the city lights reflecting in my eyes, thinking about the children I had left behind. There were fleeting pangs of loneliness, a subtle ache for the family that had failed me. But these feelings were no longer chains, they were reminders of my strength. I allowed myself to feel them, to acknowledge the past, but I didn't let them define me. I was free to love myself fully, to nurture my own happiness without guilt or apology. One afternoon, as I walked through a park lined with blooming roses, I encountered a group of women practicing yoga. They invited me to join, and I accepted. The slow stretches, deep breathing, and meditative focus felt like therapy for my body and soul. I realized that for decades I had ignored my own needs in favor of everyone else's. Now I honored myself. Each pose, each breath was a declaration. I matter. I deserve care. I deserve peace. Hope often reminded me of the power of connection. She introduced me to her friends, encouraged me to attend social gatherings, and pushed me gently to step outside my comfort zone. One evening at a small dinner party, I met a retired professor named Mr. Harrison. His eyes were kind, his voice calm, and his presence comforting. We spoke about literature, history, and life's unexpected twists. There was no romance, but a quiet companionship that made me feel seen and respected. It was a reminder that meaningful relationships could exist outside the traditional bounds of family, and that respect and kindness were as nourishing as any affection I had once longed for from my children. Letters and messages from my children continued to arrive sporadically. Isaac, Mila, Benjamin, and Diana had begun to understand, slowly and painfully, the depth of their mistakes. They wrote asking if I was okay, expressing vague regrets, and occasionally hinting at reconciliation. I read each message with careful detachment. My heart no longer beat in fear or hope of their approval. I was free to choose whether to respond or remain silent, and for now, silence was my declaration of independence. In my new routine, I discovered hidden talents and passions. I took a short course in creative writing at a local community centre, finding joy in crafting stories that reflected my own experiences and imaginings. I joined a women's book club where discussions were lively, insightful, and without judgment. I painted, danced, wrote, and walked through the city with a sense of purpose I had never known. The city itself seemed to embrace me, its vibrant energy matching the rekindled fire within me. There were days when I simply sat in Hope's garden, surrounded by jasmine and roses, sipping tea and listening to the gentle hum of life around me. These moments of stillness became sacred. I allowed myself to feel contentment without guilt, to revel in my achievements without seeking validation from anyone else. I realized that for decades I had equated love with sacrifice and recognition. Now, I understood that self-love and self-respect were the foundations upon which all true joy could be built. One crisp morning I received a call from Linda, my unwavering friend and confidant. "Cecilia," she said warmly, "I just wanted to hear your voice. How's the Queen of Dallas doing today?" I laughed, the sound rich and full of life. "Better than I've been in decades, Linda. I'm learning what it feels like to truly live, to truly breathe." Her laughter echoed through the phone, a shared celebration of my newfound freedom. Evenings became my reflection time. I wrote in my diary about my discoveries, my small victories, and my moments of clarity. One entry captured the essence of my transformation. Today I realized that the weight I carried for 40 years was never mine to bear. It belonged to those who failed to love, to recognize, to nurture. Today I choose differently. I choose myself. I choose dignity. I choose life. I began to understand that freedom was not just a physical relocation, it was an emotional liberation. It was the courage to stand alone, to reclaim what had been lost, and to create a life that honoured my worth. Every step, every choice, every smile, and every act of self-care was a testament to the woman I had always been, waiting for the moment to emerge. And in the quiet moments, as the Dallas skyline glimmered under the evening sky, I whispered to myself, "This is only the beginning. My life is mine, and I will live it fully, fiercely, and unapologetically." Part. 12 Cecilia's Courageous Leap. 1,000 words. The city of Dallas welcomed me like a soft breeze on a hot summer day. Each morning the sunlight spilled over the rooftops and painted my room in gold. I felt a quiet exhilaration as I opened my eyes, not because of anyone's expectation, but because of my own anticipation. For the first time in decades, my life belonged to me. Hope had organised a small gathering at her house that weekend, a celebration of my first month in Dallas. It was simple, homemade food, laughter echoing through the garden, and stories shared over cups of steaming tea. I watched the women chatting, their faces relaxed and bright, and realised I had been missing this kind of connection for far too long. The conversations weren't about obligations or responsibilities. They were about living, feeling, and sharing. It was during that gathering that I met Mrs. Alvarez, a retired nurse with a contagious laugh and a gentle heart. She took my hand and said, "Cecilia, your eyes tell a story of courage. You deserve every moment of happiness that comes your way." Her words touched something deep within me. For decades I had sought validation from my children only to find emptiness. Now strangers' recognition of my worth felt more meaningful than anything my family had ever offered. My mornings were reserved for walks in the park. The group of women I had met earlier had become my companions, my sisters in spirit. We walked, we talked, we laughed, and sometimes we cried together. One morning, as we sat on a bench watching children play, I realised I was smiling without restraint. No pretense, no fear, just pure, unfiltered joy. Work at the boutique had become more than a part-time job. It was a space where I felt respected and valued. Customers sought my advice not because they had to, but because they trusted my experience. One elderly woman, Mrs. Thompson, confided in me about her struggles with her grown children. I listened, offered advice, and for the first time in my life felt the power of empathy unburdened by guilt or obligation. Yet the letters and messages from my children didn't cease. They ranged from tentative apologies to desperate pleas. Isaac wrote, "Mom, I can't believe you left without a word. We need you here." Mella sent a long message full of self-justification and subtle accusations. Benjamin tried to manipulate with guilt, and Diana's texts vacillated between anger and false sweetness. I read them all, feeling a strange mix of emotions, nostalgia, irritation, and sometimes fleeting sorrow. But I did not respond. My silence was a shield, a boundary I had finally learned to uphold. One rainy afternoon, I received a call from Mr. Harrison, the widower I had met at the dance class. "Cecilia," he said softly, "I hope the rain doesn't dampen your spirits. Dallas seems brighter when you're here." His gentle voice reminded me that meaningful connections could flourish without expectation, without the past's heavy baggage. We began meeting regularly, sometimes for walks in the park, sometimes for coffee, simply enjoying each other's company without labels, without pressure. The art classes continued to fuel my creativity. One day I painted a canvas inspired by the stormy weather outside, deep blues merging with fiery reds, streaks of orange and hints of gold. When I showed it to Hope, she gasped, "Cecilia, this is incredible! It's as if you've poured your entire journey onto the canvas." I realised then that my emotions, my struggles and my triumphs could transform into beauty, something tangible that others could see and feel. Despite the joy, I occasionally felt pangs of loneliness. In the quiet of my room at night, I thought about the children I had left behind. The memories were bittersweet, moments of laughter, small gestures of love and the ache of years of neglect. But instead of sinking into sorrow, I wrote in my diary, "I will not let the past steal the present. The weight of ungrateful years will not determine the light of today. I am free. I am alive. I am Cecilia." As weeks turned into months, my confidence grew. I started volunteering at a community centre, helping seniors who felt invisible in a world that often overlooked them. I shared my story cautiously, inspiring others who had endured neglect or invisibility. Their gratitude reminded me that my voice had power, that my presence mattered beyond my family's approval. One afternoon, while painting in the cultural centre, a young woman named Lily approached me. She had tears in her eyes. "Cecilia," she said, "I've been struggling with my own family. They don't see me, just like your children didn't see you. How did you find the courage to leave?" I smiled gently, holding her hands. "Courage," I told her, "is not the absence of fear. It's the decision to value yourself despite the fear. It's the understanding that your life is yours, and no one else gets to dictate your worth." Evenings became a sacred time for reflection. I would sit in the garden, the scent of jasmine thick in the air, and watch the sky change colours. I realised that Dallas was not just a city, it was a canvas for reinvention, a sanctuary for my rebirth. Each day I painted, danced and wrote, not only to explore my passions, but to affirm my existence. Linda's weekly calls remained my anchor. Her voice was a constant reminder that I was not alone, that some bonds could endure the test of time and distance. "Cecilia," she said one day, "you're inspiring. You've taken control of your life in a way most people never dare." I laughed softly. "It took 40 years of waiting, Linda, but I finally understand what it means to live for myself." The children's attempts to reconnect continued, but now I felt neither guilt nor urgency. I had discovered a freedom so profound that no message, no plea could compromise it. I had rebuilt my identity, my self-worth, and my dignity. I had chosen life over obligation, love for myself over ungrateful family ties. One morning, as I sipped my tea on the balcony, I noticed the sun glinting off the skyscrapers. My heart swelled with a sense of accomplishment and serenity. For the first time, I was living not in the shadow of neglect, but in the full light of self-determination. Every choice, every step, every smile was mine. And in that moment, I whispered to the wind, "This is my life and it is beautiful. I am Cecilia, complete, strong and free." Part 13. The letters that shook their world, 1,000 words. Weeks had passed since I had settled into Dallas, and my life had begun to bloom in ways I had never imagined. Each day brought small victories, a smile from a stranger, a compliment from a client at the boutique, a laugh shared with my new friends in the park. Yet, one thing lingered in the back of my mind, the letters I had left behind for my children. And it was a crisp Saturday morning when Linda called me. Her voice trembled slightly, a mixture of excitement and apprehension. "Cecilia, they've received your letter. Isaac called me first thing this morning, and I could hear the panic in his voice." I smiled softly, sipping my morning tea. "Good," I said. "Let them feel the weight of their own choices." Linda continued. Mila read it aloud to Diana and Benjamin. They were stunned, shocked, Cecilia. "They can't believe you actually left." I closed my eyes for a moment, remembering the calm satisfaction I had felt as I left my hospital bed, suitcase in hand, and walked out of the life that had only used me. "I wonder," I said quietly, "if they will ever understand the years they took from me, the love they refused to give." "They may never fully understand," Linda admitted, "but they're beginning to feel the consequences. Their world, it's shaken." That evening, as the sun set and painted the Dallas skyline in shades of orange and purple, I felt a strange thrill. The knowledge that my actions had real consequences without compromising my own happiness was intoxicating. For decades I had lived for them, sacrificed for them, and still they had been absent when I needed them most. Now the roles had reversed. Now their neglect was mirrored back at them. 3 days later, I received my first indirect update. A mutual friend from the city where I had lived called. She had overheard Isaac venting in a cafe, speaking loudly enough that everyone around could hear. "I don't understand how she could just leave. After everything, she abandons us." His voice cracked with frustration, anger, and a hint of fear. Mela, Diana, and Benjamin were no different. Their social media posts, once bright and casual, now carried tones of desperation. Pictures of family dinners captioned with pleas for connection, half-hearted apologies disguised as thoughtful messages. They were trying, but too late. I felt no anger, only a profound sense of peace. Meanwhile, life in Dallas continued to unfold beautifully. I had joined a literature class at the local university, surrounded by curious minds and inspiring discussions. My classmates, a mix of young adults and older learners, respected my experiences and welcomed my stories. I read aloud my first essay, reflecting on decades of life lessons and the power of reclaiming one's own destiny. The applause was genuine, not obligatory. In that moment, I realized I had found a community that celebrated me for who I was, not what I had done for them. One afternoon, while taking a walk in the park, I met an elderly gentleman, Mr. Thompson. He had an aura of wisdom and kindness, and we soon became companions on morning walks. He shared tales of his late wife and the adventures they had planned but never completed. Listening to him, I felt a connection to someone who understood the fragility and beauty of life. "Unlike my children, Mr." Thompson valued presence over obligation, sincerity over convenience. Yet the most striking moments were those small personal victories. I signed up for a painting workshop, finally exploring the artistic side of my soul. Each stroke of the brush, each mix of colour felt like a reclamation of the self I had buried under years of expectation. My canvases transformed into landscapes of hope, liberation, and subtle defiance, vivid reminders that I had survived neglect and was now thriving. Back home, hope often reminded me of how far I had come. "Cecilia, your transformation is remarkable. You look radiant. You walk with a strength that turns heads. And the way you carry yourself. It's magnetic." I laughed softly. "It's not magic, cousin. It's survival, courage, and finally loving myself enough to say no to the life that suffocated me." Meanwhile, the letters had left a permanent mark on my children. Isaac, once proud and commanding, now called cautiously, trying to gauge if I would respond. Mela attempted indirect contacts through mutual friends, testing boundaries. Benjamin oscillated between anger and guilt, while Diana struggled to reconcile her life with the reality that her mother had made an unbreakable choice. And yet, through all of this, I remained untouched, not by bitterness or malice, but by clarity. My decision was deliberate, and the consequences, though emotional, were a testament to the respect I finally demanded for myself. I had chosen dignity over obligation, peace over chaos, and joy over despair. One evening, sitting in my garden with a cup of chamomile tea, I reflected on the irony. For decades, I had believed that my children's love was indispensable. Now, I understood that self-love was the only foundation strong enough to withstand betrayal, neglect, and indifference. My heart, once burdened with guilt and longing, now held freedom, self-respect, and a deep, unwavering serenity. The letters had done more than communicate my absence. They had awakened consequences, reflection, and awareness in the children who once took me for granted. But for me, they were merely punctuation in the grand narrative of a life reclaimed. As night fell and the stars shimmered above the Dallas skyline, I wrote a new entry in my diary. Today I celebrate not what I have lost, but what I have gained. Freedom, dignity, and a life truly mine. The past cannot control me. My happiness is no longer negotiable. I am Cecilia, whole, radiant, unstoppable. In that moment, I knew without doubt, the story of my rebirth was not just for me, it was a beacon for anyone who had ever been diminished, overlooked, or undervalued. And as I looked toward the horizon, I felt ready to embrace every possibility, every adventure, every joy that awaited me in this new chapter of life. Part 14. New friends, new adventures, 1,000 words. The morning sun filtered softly through the curtains, casting warm light across the lavender-scented sheets. I stretched and felt the quiet thrill of waking up in a home that belonged entirely to me. No schedules dictated by ungrateful children, no hurried, indifferent visits, no empty promises, just the rhythm of my own heartbeat and the freedom to choose my own day. Hope had already left for the community garden, leaving a note. "Breakfast in the kitchen. Don't forget your hat for later. Exciting day ahead." Excitement sparked in me, a feeling I hadn't experienced in decades. I showered, dressed in a soft cream blouse and light blue skirt, and went to the kitchen, greeted by the smell of freshly baked bread. Over breakfast, Hope told me about a local women's group meeting at the park, a community of women who met every week to share experiences, support one another, and learn new skills. "You'll love it, Cecilia. These ladies are incredible. Some have faced challenges much worse than ours, and yet they smile, they create, they live fully." I smiled, feeling a curious flutter in my chest. The thought of meeting women who truly understood resilience excited me more than I had expected. "I'm ready," I said, my voice firm, carrying the resolve I had nurtured over the past few months. At the park, the group greeted me warmly. Their smiles were genuine, their eyes kind and unjudging. Some were widows, some retired professionals, some simply women seeking friendship and connection. There was laughter, stories shared, and hands reaching out to include me in games and exercises. For the first time in decades, I felt I belonged. Not because I had given everything for someone else, but because I was present, alive, and fully myself. One woman, Martha, approached me during a break. She had a gentle face framed by silver hair, eyes bright with curiosity and warmth. "I've been watching you, Cecilia. You carry yourself with such dignity, and yet I sense a story behind those eyes. Would you like to share it?" I hesitated, feeling the familiar urge to shield myself, to protect the vulnerable heart I had spent years exposing to disappointment. But there was something in her tone, a mixture of empathy and admiration, that invited honesty. I took a deep breath. I've spent most of my life sacrificing for children who never valued me, and now I'm learning what it means to live for myself. Her eyes softened. "You're brave, Cecilia. Most would have continued to endure, hoping for gratitude that never comes. You've chosen a different path, and that is nothing short of extraordinary." The day passed in a blur of shared laughter, stories, and new beginnings. I learned to knit alongside Esther, who taught me patterns that reminded her of her mother. I joined a small painting circle where colours flowed freely, mirroring the liberation I felt inside, and I realised something profound. Joy could grow even from the soil of abandonment. Returning home, I felt a wave of gratitude wash over me. Dallas was no longer just a city. It was a sanctuary, a canvas for the life I had always dreamed of, but never allowed myself to claim. I unpacked my new stationery, ready to continue the habit of journaling, capturing the moments that made me feel alive. Later that evening, a small invitation arrived at my door. It was from the local community centre. "Cecilia, we would love for you to attend our monthly storytelling night. Share your journey, your wisdom, or simply listen. Every story matters." I held the card in my hands, feeling an unexpected rush of nervousness and excitement. Sharing my story. Would I reveal my past, the pain and neglect, or the triumph and liberation? Slowly, a smile formed on my lips. Yes, it is time. My story deserves to be heard, not for revenge, but for inspiration. Days turned into weeks. My mornings were filled with walks and park gatherings, afternoons with painting, reading and learning, evenings with cooking and laughter with hope. And all the while the letters I had sent continued to ripple through my old life. I saw posts on social media from my children, now more reflective, quieter. There was regret in their tone, hints of recognition that they had lost someone invaluable, but I did not dwell on it. Their realization did not dictate my happiness. I had built a life rooted in choice, autonomy, and self-love. One afternoon, while painting a landscape of the park, I heard a familiar voice behind me. "Cecilia, mind if I join you?" I turned and saw Mr. Thompson, the gentleman from my morning walks. He carried a small wooden easel and a palette of colours. "I thought I could try painting too," he said, a hint of shy excitement in his smile. We spent hours side by side, creating worlds on canvas, sharing stories and exchanging laughter. For the first time in years, I experienced companionship that was mutual, respectful, and free of expectation. It was not romantic, but it was profoundly comforting, a testament that meaningful connections could bloom at any stage of life. That night, as I sipped chamomile tea and watched the city lights twinkle, I felt a deep sense of accomplishment. The woman who had once felt invisible, discarded and unworthy now walked boldly in a life she had carved for herself. Each step, each choice, each smile was a declaration of her regained dignity. I wrote in my diary, "Today, I met brave women who reminded me that life can be full of joy, even after heartbreak. Today, I painted not just colours, but freedom. Today, I realised that happiness does not require permission. It requires courage, and I finally have it." Sleep came that night wrapped in serenity. The past remained a part of me, but it no longer controlled me. My children's absence was not emptiness, it was clarity. My new friendships were not substitutes, they were affirmations that I mattered. And as the moonlight spilled into my room, I felt ready to embrace the next chapter, the next adventure, the next story that awaited me in Dallas. Part 15 new challenges, deeper freedom, 1,000 words. The morning light spilled gently through the lace curtains, casting patterns on the floor like soft whispers of promise. I woke up feeling a profound sense of calm, yet beneath it lay a tingling anticipation. Today I would step a little further into the life I had claimed, my life unburdened by guilt, expectation, or the shadows of the past. After breakfast, I walked to the local library, a place I had spotted during my morning strolls but never entered. The moment I stepped inside, the smell of books, old and new, enveloped me. It was intoxicating. Rows upon rows of stories, knowledge, and dreams beckoned. I wandered through the aisles, fingers grazing the spines, feeling a thrill I hadn't known since my youth. A librarian, noticing my curiosity, smiled warmly. "Looking for anything in particular?" she asked. "Perhaps just inspiration," I replied with a small laugh. She nodded knowingly and handed me a stack of books on women's history, art, and personal growth. "You'll find plenty here," she said, her eyes twinkling. Sitting by a sunlit window, I opened the first book. Each page seemed to whisper encouragement. Women who had faced immense struggles, abandonment, and societal neglect had created incredible legacies. I felt a connection, a shared understanding of resilience. Tears pricked my eyes, not of sadness but of recognition, relief, and hope. I was no longer invisible. I too could write a story worth telling. Returning home, I found a small envelope in the mailbox. Unusual for Dallas, in a world dominated by emails and notifications. I opened it to find an invitation to a community volunteer group, focused on helping seniors who had no family support. "We heard about your journey, Cecilia. Your courage inspires us. Come, share your wisdom and experience. Help others rediscover their strength." My heart swelled. Here was a chance to give, not because it was expected, but because it was meaningful. I wrote back immediately, accepting with anticipation. That afternoon, I prepared for my first volunteer meeting. I felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. Could I truly help others while still finding my own balance? Hope noticed my apprehension and smiled. "Remember, Cecilia, helping others doesn't diminish your freedoms, it amplifies it." The community centre was alive with chatter, laughter, and the soft hum of activity. Seniors shared their stories, their fears, and their hopes. I listened first, absorbing every word. Then, when it was my turn, I spoke. I told them about the life I had left behind, about the children who never valued me, and about the courage it took to reclaim my life. There were nods of understanding, quiet gasps, and even tears. One woman, Ruth, grasped my hands and said, "Cecilia, you've given me hope I thought I'd lost forever. You remind me that it's never too late to live for yourself." That night, as I walked back home under the stars, I felt a lightness that words could scarcely capture. Every interaction, every story shared, reinforced the truth I had begun to live fully. My worth was not tied to the approval of those who had ignored me. It was inherent, undeniable, and fiercely mine. Over the next week, my life began to fill with small, meaningful challenges. I took part in cooking classes, learning new recipes and techniques I had long denied myself. I joined a book club where discussions sparked curiosity and laughter, and I spent hours walking in the park with friends who became companions in every sense, offering support, joy, and understanding. Yet the echoes of the past were never entirely silent. Occasionally, a notification from social media reminded me of my children's attempts to reconnect. Messages ranged from polite inquiries to guilt-laden pleas, but now I read them with detachment, aware that responding was a choice, not an obligation. My heart, once tethered to their approval, now beat freely. One evening, as I painted by the window, Mr. Harrison stopped by with 2 cups of tea. We watched the sunset together, sharing quiet conversation. "You seem different, Cecilia," he said gently. "There's a peace about you now, a confidence that wasn't there before." "I've reclaimed my life," I replied simply, "and with it my joy, my freedom, and my dignity." He nodded, a soft smile on his face. "It's inspiring, truly." The following weekend, I attended the first meeting of the volunteer group. Meeting seniors who were navigating life alone, I realized how much strength I had cultivated without ever recognizing it. Helping them register for programs, offering guidance, or simply listening, I discovered the profound joy of contributing to lives that, like mine once had been overlooked. Returning home that evening, Hope greeted me with a warm embrace. "You glow, Cecilia. You've become a light not just for yourself, but for others too." I smiled, feeling the truth of her words resonate deeply. My journey of liberation had not only given me freedom, but had created ripples of hope in others. I realized that true happiness was not solitary, it was shared, nurtured, and extended. Before bed, I journaled, "Today I saw that life offers second chances at every stage." My courage inspires others, and in turn their stories strengthen me. I am no longer defined by the past or by those who fail to value me. I am Cecilia, whole, free, and radiant. This is my time, my story, my life. That night, as I lay in my bed surrounded by the scent of jasmine and lavender, I knew that while the journey ahead would hold new challenges, I was ready. Every choice, every step, every interaction affirmed my agency, my freedom, and my worth. The life I had carved was no longer just a dream. It was reality, vivid and undeniable. For the first time in decades, sleep came not as an escape, but as a gentle celebration of life lived courageously and fully. Part 16, Cecilia's New Challenges. The first few weeks in Dallas had been like a dream. I woke up every morning to the sunlight streaming through Hope's large windows, the scent of jasmine filling the air. For the first time in decades, I felt alive, not just existing for someone else. I had a small part-time job at a boutique. I attended painting classes, and I walked every morning with women who became friends instantly. But freedom, I soon realized, was not without its own challenges. Every time my phone buzzed with the social media post from my children, I felt a sharp pang. Isaac's latest post showed him smiling at a party with his friends. Mila had shared pictures of her new vacation. Diana flaunted another expensive dress. They were living their lives completely indifferent to mine, and yet I was free. That freedom, beautiful as it was, came with the quiet ache of abandonment. One rainy afternoon, As I walked home from the market with a basket full of fresh vegetables, I found myself thinking about all the years I had spent trying to please them, each sacrifice, each birthday forgotten, each sleepless night spent worrying about their happiness. It had all been for nothing. The weight of it hit me like the cold rain soaking my coat. I almost wanted to cry, but instead I let the tears fall quietly, without shame, in the middle of a city that didn't know my past. Hope noticed my silence when I returned home. She placed a warm hand on my shoulder. "Cecilia," she said gently, "you're allowed to feel everything. Don't bottle it up. You've been holding this pain for decades." Her words felt like permission, like a soft balm over a wound that had never healed. I nodded, letting myself feel the sadness I had buried for so long. That night I sat in my new room with a cup of tea, looking out at the garden illuminated by the moon. I realized that independence was not just about leaving my children behind. It was about facing the emptiness they had left behind and learning to live with it. Some nights would be lonely, some days would remind me of the family I'd lost, and yet, each morning I woke with the chance to build a life that was truly mine. Then there were the unexpected joys. I met Mr. Harrison at dance class again. He wasn't just company, he was someone who reminded me that companionship didn't have to come with obligation or disappointment. He laughed easily, admired my paintings, and listened without judgment. There was no pressure, no history of neglect, just quiet, genuine respect. One afternoon, while we were dancing, I felt a spark of something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. Not the faint, fragile hope I had clung to in my hospital bed, but real, solid hope that my life still held surprises, friendships, and happiness I had thought were lost forever. And yet, even with all this, the messages from my children kept coming. They ranged from panic to guilt to apology to polite distance. I read them silently, feeling the sting but refusing to respond. Every unread message reminded me of one truth: love cannot be demanded. It is earned, and mine had been wasted on those who had no interest in valuing me. That night I wrote in my diary, "Freedom is not easy. It comes with a strange mix of joy and sorrow. I am learning to navigate both. I miss what could have been, but I am building what will be. And for the first time, I am doing it for myself, not for anyone else." As I closed the diary, I felt a strange sense of peace. The path ahead was unknown, filled with both beauty and challenges. But I was no longer the woman who waited for crumbs of attention. I was Cecilia, complete, free, and finally I could allow myself to dream at part 17. Cecilia faces her past. Weeks had passed since I arrived in Dallas, and life had begun to feel stable. Yet stability brought its own shadows. Every morning I walked through the park with my new friends. I saw families together,